Hello, everybody. Welcome back to 17 and some change. I am EcuDes17. I come to bring you my 2 cents. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Glad you are all able to be alive and to watch this video and things of that nature. Today's video is going to consist of a Q&A surrounding borderline personality disorder. I'm going to give you my point of view as somebody who is um, a self-aware borderline, and so hopefully something useful is in there for anybody out there who either has the condition or knows somebody with or dates somebody with BPD. Um, so I was so that's gonna be the main like the main thing that we're going to do today. Um, but before we get to that, I just wanted to speak quickly on a situation. I'll speak quickly on it, and I'd like to do a blog post on it as well, something a little bit more in depth, but something that's been kind of coming up around me a lot recently. Maybe just coincidentally, or maybe because um, I am turning into a um, I am becoming a cook that gets compliments. Right, my cooking is starting to get compliments when I do it at work for the clientele and stuff like that. Um, And so I'm hearing a lot of women talk about how they don't like to cook and that they don't cook and stuff like that. And to me that's tragic. But I want to acknowledge, kind of what their point of view is. First, I want to kind of build a argument briefly for them first. Um, they some might just not enjoy it. Some might find it to be a lot of moving parts. It takes a certain amount of mental energy to cook, and it's very easy to mess up, and it's pressureful in that way. And some of them might just really not like the process because it's a pain in the ass process. Others um, might have men who are, uh, expecting uh, childlike treatment in regards to, making food for them whenever they're hungry, make me a sandwich type of thing, um, where you're perfectly capable of doing so yourself. Another faction do it to spite, or another faction dislike cooking to spite gender roles, and that's really the faction that bothers me the most. Um, though I try not to let. I mean, I use the term bothers me very loosely, um, because to each their own and stuff like that. But it is kind of tragic, um, when women are thinking about uh, not cooking for men as a way of sticking it to the traditional gender roles and sticking it to the man and stuff like that. I think if that's the sole reason that you're refusing to learn how to cook and refusing to cook in general, um, you're sabotaging something that uh, is a very honorable thing. To be able to provide uh, nutrition and provide sustenance to the people that you love or just people that you care about in any capacity, it's a wonderful thing. It's a very noble thing, and my grandmother was like that. She was, whether it was expected of the woman, uh, societally or not, she took great pride and found great fulfillment in keeping her family um well fed, right? And I think it is definitely a way to show that you care. And I think most men, you know, I ran into somebody. I was talking to a female the other day, and she described herself as not very maternal. And now there is a difference between being nurturing and being maternal, but I feel like most men, I feel like all men, they want a female to have at least a resemblance. Not all, not all, but most men. Generally speaking, most men want females to have at least some semblance of that quality, of nurturing and maternal instincts and compassion, stuff like that. You know, far too many men want to be mothered by their women, and that's not good. I mean, far too many women want to be babied by their man, and that's not necessarily. I mean, in my worldview, that's not necessarily the best thing ever either. Um, but I think a little bit. Um, I think uh, a little bit of those instincts and those a little bit of paternity is goes a long way. Um, in a committed relationship and stuff like that. A little, you know, both ways. You know, um, to check in on somebody and make sure that they're to want the best for somebody's mind, body, and soul uh isn't infantilizing them. You know what I mean? Um, so I think men, by and large, um, are extremely grateful for women who can cook, and if they're not, then well, they should be, you know. um, so that's that. I also want to mention briefly, real quick, too, before we do get into some of these questions. I do want to say that, um, and I'm not expecting this to happen, but I'm hedging against it already. Right, I am Equidez, right? My brand, Equidez Ventures, um, is operates as a licensed corporation. Um, I have intellectual property, um, under the banner "The Way of Equidez." I am Equidez. I created uh, a last name moniker 17, right? So I refer to myself as Ecudes 17 to have some sort of a last name, right? Um, and so with that being said, there will not be another Ecudes unless I say so. Unless I explicitly announce that I've brought on another person into the brand, and I'm giving them an Ecudes name with a number, which I don't see that happening. Maybe my offspring someday, but yeah, if anybody says, "Oh, I'm an Ecudes 15," or "I'm Ecudes 18," or "I'm Ecudes 20," like it's complete horse relish. There is no such thing. Um, uh, I am the original, and and that's what that is. And I'll you know continue to drop those reminders every once in a purple moon and stuff like that. And now, without any further ado, let's get to some questionnaires. So let me mark this. It's about, you know, 11 minutes and, say 50 seconds in that we actually start going on these questions and stuff like that. A lot of this is blind. I've only looked at two of these questions. So I'm gonna start with the first one and we'll see how it goes. It says, "What does emotional pain feel like for you when it spikes? What happens internally?" Um, so I've described it before as like being able to feel emotions like in your bones. Like it doesn't feel like you here's a good way to put it. It doesn't feel like you're having an emotion, right? It doesn't feel like, oh, uh, I'm Steve and I'm having anger, and I have a little bit of anger or whatnot. It feels like you become anger, like you become possessed by the spirit of anger, and you just are angry, like at your core, or you just are sad, like at your core, like it becomes your identity, uh, uh, because it is an identity disorder, right? And we'll talk, and that'll come up a lot in the discussions about borderline. But yeah, like the when your emotions are really spiked, it feels like that's your new state. you know we're all about self states and stuff like that, and emotions are able to hijack, um and kind of turn you into that self state. um Luckily, I've had a lot of practice, like recognizing and combating um, this phenomena. You know what I mean? And more so than combating it, even better, one more is harnessing it, right? So you harness that anger or that upset feeling, and you hold on to it and you unleash it later. Like you use it like Tom Brady, you use it for motivation. You know what I mean? um but yeah, it was, a lot of the trouble I've got into in my life was just being an emotional person. You know what I mean? People tell me, "Oh, like you're so chill." now and stuff like that. Like I had to work, I don't know, exponentially harder than the next person to be able to present as, a halfway show. And so um, to be called somebody who is patient and to be called somebody who is chill and laid back and understanding and stuff like that, as frequently as I do, and to be able to work in a field that requires excessive amounts of patience, like I am, I want to say I'm blessed. But I am blessed, and I came a long way. You know what I mean? So, borderline personality is not, for lack of better terms, is not a death sentence. A lot of people, they do learn to function and stuff like that, function well and stuff like that. Um, so it also asks, when you feel afraid someone might leave or reject you, what thoughts tend to show up first? Um, this is an interesting one because a lot of the times it's they're not thoughts, right? It's not like people always describe it as like, oh, they feel worthless, they feel like they're gonna be abandoned and stuff like that. And that's the right term. Feel is the right term. Like these aren't conscious thoughts. Like we don't never have I thought to myself that I'm worthless. You know what I mean? Actually quite the opposite. Um but it's feelings like you feel like something's a little bit off. You know what I mean? And a lot of times we're right because we are hypersensitive to other people's emotional cues and stuff like that. But a lot of times we're wrong because we are hypersensitive to other people's emotional cues and stuff like that. And we tend to do a lot of self sabotaging or sabotaging the relationship when you know when we feel like the person's slipping away from us. We tend to get either desperate and start doing like wild shows of affection and losing ourselves, or we do the opposite and we push the other person away because we think we feel like they don't like us as much anymore. It's like, and it doesn't take much. Like the borderline, like in order to make a borderline think you like them, like you have to be overt. You have to be basically love bombing them. Like you have to pretty much laugh at all their shit. You have to like your eyes have to light up every time you see them. You have to fucking greet them with smiles. Like you can't like be busy on your phone when they like walk in and stuff like that. They're gonna take that shit personally, subconsciously, and stuff like that. Like, nah, in order for a borderline to feel safe and comfortable and like he or she isn't going to get abandoned, you have to essentially be love bombing them. And then when you do, they're going to feel freaking inevitably they're going to feel, what do you call it? Like enmeshed. And then they're going to not like that either, right? They're going to be suspicious and feel like overtaken and enmeshed if they're constantly just getting love bombed. So that's another one of those tightropes that you find yourself walking. You know what I mean? Um, as a partner or as a potential partner and stuff like that. Um, so it's not thoughts. it's feelings. Like it's just gut feelings that we get, and it's um, just based on how we interpreted or how we witnessed our first interactions growing up. Like, what are examples of um, caretakers were, or what are examples of what do people who love us usually do. Like, the examples have shown in the lifetime of most borderlines, because borderline is a condition born out of trauma. The examples for most borderlines show that, yeah, they get abandoned. Like, that's the norm. You know what I mean? Do you experience people as all good or all bad at times, and what does that feel like in the moment? All the time. At times, no. All the flipping time. Like, um and when I say all the time, I mean almost all the time. I mean, like, very often. Um since I've learned about what that is, I've become a lot better at it. But I always find myself having rivals. I always find myself, you know, being a harsh critic of people's moral character and their moral compass. And I'm very quick to classify somebody as a piece of shit if I catch them in a single lie. Um, I'm very, very quick to classify people as bad people. Um, when I'm seeing them do shady shit, or when I'm seeing inflated egos, or when I'm seeing, like, signs of narcissism. Like, enough narcissistic displays will get you labeled in that way and stuff like that. And and likewise, there are people I'm like, oh no, this person is great. This is like the ideal. It's called idealization. Like, I'm like, nah, this is like the ideal of what you're looking for in a person, and stuff like that. And I've gotten a lot better with that as well. Um, ever since I identified it, and knowing and realizing that people are, you know, first and foremost, more than their diagnosis, if we're talking about narcissists. But um, people are also more than their 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 bad choices. Um, and people, even bad people, do good things sometimes and stuff like that. But um, I'm not going to let that, you know, uh, convince me that everybody is worthy of um a level of admiration. Maybe everybody is worthy of a level of basic human dignity and basic respect, um, but certainly not admiration. And I'm not going to let the knowledge of the fact that I paint people black or white um, allow me to still not have a standard, for morality, and a standard for character, right? And the harder that I fight to live up to that standard, um, the less forgiveness and patience I have for those who don't, which is ironic because living up to that standard assumes that you carry patience and acceptance for those who can't. So that's kind of a thing there. But yeah, I think of people as pieces of shit all the time if they steal something or something like that. Somebody like Eddie Guerrero, for example. Um, Actually, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna speak poorly on Eddie Guerrero. So actually, just never mind that. Um, but I mean, the moniker was I lie, I cheat, I steal. So, maybe he has a lot of redeeming qualities as a human, but, for a long time, I was not so happy with him there. Um, so then it says, what situations tend to trigger the strongest emotional reactions for you? The ones involving people, specifically the ones involving females. There's um, yeah, just social dynamics, females, anything involving like love, like that that stuff really because it's one of those things. It's tough because like the more um yeah, no, when I do like love and stuff like that, like when I'm talking to a female and I'm putting her on that pedestal, I'm idealizing her, I'm picturing like a future for us, and and uh and I'm picturing even short term or like we're dating, like we just started dating, um or whatever the case is, like when I'm with a female like that, like it feels existential. Like whatever we have going on between myself and that female, like it feels like life or death. Like it feels like l- everything about life is beautiful and like opioids, whereas it nothing's worth shit uh without it. It's like a drug. It is like a drug to me. um and so that's tough. And then and it's one of those things. It's like sometimes the more you want something, the less available it becomes to you. But that's not always the case, because sometimes when you look at a woman with that amount of desire and that amount of passion, and you're not ugly, they fucking melt. Um, but then there's the catch 22. It's like, oh, they want all that passion from you, right? They love the passion. They love that you look at them like they're the only person that exists, but yet they can't handle the jealousy. They don't want the jealousy, and they want you to just be like, laid back and chill when it comes to like them hanging out with other dudes and stuff like that. And it's like you can't really have both. Like you can't, have a man that's obsessed with you, but yet want him to be like aloof and stuff like that when it comes to like you going out with other you hanging out with other dudes and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Um, and then and then of course, like I said, I have a very low frustration tolerance for shitty men or men that I perceive to have um, character flaws. And then the ultimate is when you put them together. So when you have a woman that I am idealizing, and then you introduce a guy who I believe to be a scumbag, um, I get then I'm dealing with a lot of stuff, and that's the toughest for me, right? This is the final boss as a borderline, is having a fucking male rival that you don't trust trying to spit game to a female that you've idealized, especially if she's entertaining him. It's like, all right, this is an absolute recipe for either shutting down, or either like ignoring the whole situation, or like beating the living shit out of somebody, or doing something you're gonna regret. Like, this is, if you want to set off a borderline, that's a really good place to start. But like I said, this is the final boss in terms of like emotional control. um and it's something that, you know, that I'm still working on. I'm getting there. You know what I mean? I didn't know that this combination of stressors could exist, with each one on their own being visceral, and then combining them, it's ridiculousness. It's absolute ridiculousness. But it too can be conquered. Everything can be conquered. It's about detachment. It's about acceptance, and it's about um, finding a female or a male if you're a female, borderline. It's about finding a partner that's not going to entertain BS, or they're not going to entertain or flirt with others. You know what I mean? Um, so, and even for non-borderlines, like that's kind of egregious, but even more so with us. How do you experience your sense? Okay, now we're going into identity. It's asking, how do you experience your sense of identity? Do you feel consistent in who you are, or does that shift? That identity is a tough one. Identity is definitely this thing. It feels like it definitely shifts underneath your feet. You know what I mean? And I don't know where the threshold is, because I know most people behave differently based on their environment, right? Like pretty much everybody behaves differently on the block than they would at church or at a party or something like that. And so there's a little bit of that's natural. Um, but I don't know where the threshold is. I know with myself, my persona is very tied into my mood. My persona and my mood kind of go hand in hand. Um, and Yeah, it fluctuates a lot. I feel like I would be a heck of a method actor. A method actor is somebody who, puts themselves in the shoes of the role that they're playing, and they actually allow themselves to feel the emotions and become the character. I feel like I could do stuff like that. Um, I feel like um, there's an ever, like I said, a floor that's shifting underneath you, and you're constantly thinking of yourself differently, depending on the time of the day and stuff like that, and thinking about how you relate to the world differently and stuff like that. I mean, you can. uh, how borderlines switch on other people, they switch on themselves, right? In a 20-minute session of being in front of a mirror, I could oscillate 4 times between, wow, this is a very attractive person I'm looking at, and oh man, I'm falling apart. You know what I mean? And and that's just what that is. Like I said, self states come attached to a persona, and our self states switch drastically and pretty easily and stuff like that. Um, they also switch based on like who's around us, the energies around us, and stuff like that can instantaneously throw us into different self states and stuff like that. Um, but the good thing about all that stuff being said is I have done the work to find out which values I hold true across every self state. Um, at the end of the day, I still feel like it's me. I still feel like I'm me, regardless of like self state or persona. Um, I always feel like it's me inside my head. You know what I mean? But I have identified all the things, all the characteristics, all the things that I hold true across across all the emotional spectrum. So now I know that even if I'm in this state of mind or that state of mind or that state of mind, I know where my morality, where my moral limits are. I know where my moral compass is. I have my moral compass regardless of self state. And that it really helps tie my identity. It's like, okay, today I might be feeling like fucking a movie star, like the shit. And then the next day I might be feeling like shit, like a poop head, like a bum, like a loser. But in both those days, I still know what my ultimate goals are. I still know what my values are and stuff like that. And grounding, uh, there's a very grounding presence to that. You know, um, what do people often misunderstand most about living with borderline personality disorder? Um, I think that maybe it's the same thing that people might misunderstand about narcissists. I um I d- I feel like most narcissists have no idea what they're doing in terms of they're not plotting. I don't believe that uh I got to be careful with that one. I got to be careful with that one when I use the term most. But swinging it back to the question, I think I can use the term most here, or I can speak for myself. Like, I'm not plotting against anybody. I don't seek out, I don't try to hurt people, right? That's the last thing I want to do. And you know, it's painful when I not painful, but a little bit painful, but like when you'll read a lot like borderlines and manipulators and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm not trying to manipulate nobody. I'm not trying to manipulate anybody. Um, not consciously. Not consciously, actually. I'd like to consider myself a very selfless person who has had to become selfish to survive. But um, no, I think often people think borderlines are just like scheming and shit like that, and it's like, nah, that's not the case. Like scheming on ways to like hurt others and stuff like that. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Like a lot of times we're just trying to survive, and like maybe on a subconscious level, you know, uh, I've heard that borderlines are driven solely by the desire to find their soulmate, or to find their favorite person, to find their special person, to find the one. Like this is their sole drive, their sole motivation. And I feel that. I felt that. I felt that 90% of my life and stuff like that. And so maybe there's uh subconscious manipulation at play, where I'm trying to create that situation, and then the approach avoidance repetition compulsion is just a manifestation of you know the subconscious desire for an ideal mate, you know but yeah, I think I borderlines, we have emotional empathy. I have emotional empathy. Whether that's consistent throughout all times and circumstances, no, it's probably not. But it definitely exists. It's definitely rousable, even under duress. Um, when relationships become intense or unstable, what patterns have you noticed in yourself? I'm very big on retreating. That's kind of my go-to. What helps you feel grounded or safe when emotions start becoming overwhelming? Um, I don't know. There's grounding techniques and stuff. I think it's just like just kind of understanding, having more of an understanding of what's going on with myself in my mind and stuff like that. Imagine like you're a person, you don't know anything about mental health. Your girlfriend or boyfriend breaks up with you, and you have the same physiological response that you had when you were a toddler and got abandoned by your mother or father. And you have no idea where that response is coming from, how that response arose. Why am I feeling like my entire heart, my entire soul just got sucked out of my chest? That can be very distressful. But once you understand that it's a flashback, it's a recreation of the emotions that you had, that you felt when you were in a helpless state, it helps you ground. um Once you understand where these feelings are coming from, that's the first step in feeling safe. It helps you feel safer. And then there's grounding techniques. You do something that takes your mind off of it, whether it's breathing techniques or um the four things you can see, five things three things you could smell, two things you can touch, etc. Um, or even just taking a shower, playing some basketball, working out. Um, with me, a lot of my a lot of my coping techniques revolve around physical movement and stuff like that. And it's saying, and that's, I was talking about harnessing your emotions before. It's like, if anything angers me, um, there's a certain level of anger that I hit, and now it just triggers a workout. Like if I'm at this level of distress and I'm at this level of anger, it automatically turns into working out, which is great. How do you distinguish between genuine intuition about people and fears driven by past wounds? That's a good question. That's a very good question. That's a very difficult question. That's one of those questions I don't think has like a definitive answer, meaning it's one of those gray area things. It's one of those balancing beams that you have to work yourself in your own situation, kind of like how much chaos versus how much order is healthy. Like it's just one of those things that you have to balance. I tend to stay on the side of caution. You know what I mean? A lot worse can happen if I ignore if you let somebody into your life that doesn't belong there, that can be a lot more catastrophic than, you know, maybe allowing somebody into your life that could have helped you out a little bit. You know, for us it's tougher because we're always looking for our soulmate, our special partner and shit like that. So it's a lot harder to err on the side of caution because we kind of want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, naturally. But no, I discern red flag. Like there are things that are red flags. You know what I mean? Like how does the people, how do they talk about their exes, for example? um you know Not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but like you'll never hear me say anything bad about any one of my exes. It's like there was a version of myself who like chose to be with those people, and so if I'm shitting on them, I'm also shitting on myself, and you're really intimate with your exes, and to just shit on that as well, like, to me it's like and some people are gonna look at me like I'm whatever it is, but like there's almost a sacredness in the bond that you share when you're as intimate when you're that intimate with somebody. When you share food with somebody, you share a bed with somebody, you share a body with somebody, you share all these things with somebody, like you share that much intimacy with somebody, like to turn around and 2 years later be like, oh, my ex was garbage. They use a bach, 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 bach. It's like you're the one that chose that person. So you're saying that your decision making skills were garbage. Um, and now you're talking shit about somebody that you kissed, and so I don't like that. That's a big red flag for me. um and then last but not least, it says, what does healing or stability look like to me? It looks like acceptance, it looks like wisdom, it looks like contentment, it looks like drive. It looks like not losing drive, but gaining acceptance without losing drive. Um, to me, that's what healing and stability looks like, is accepting what is, um, being content with what you have, but somehow simultaneously, um, just driving as far forward as you possibly can, and not being bitter, not being bitter along the way, and still maintaining some sort of goodness, and some goodwill towards humanity and things of that nature, right? Um, but I think that's a good place to leave it. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you got something good out of that, and we'll run into each other next week, God willing, eh? Okay, goodbye.